Hi, everyone. My name is Jenna Mackled, and I am kind of giving light to our project, which is Team Save the Dislikes. This group project consists of myself, James, and Sashaank, and the purpose of our project overall is to focus on the dislike counts on YouTube videos. So those are always a useful metric for separating high quality videos from lower quality videos or even potential scams. But this feature has recently been removed from YouTube, so the ability to see dislike count data publicly is no longer available to the external audience. For that reason, our project seeks to understand the trends that influence dislike activity through analytical research and use those insights to generate machine learning models, predict dislike counts, or ratios to help alert users of potentially problematic videos based on the available data set and features. So since the dislikes are not available on YouTube anymore to extract, we were able to leverage a historical data set that was able to scrape or query the dislike counts to conduct our research. So there was an extensive historical record that had been kept by archives.org, and we'll be using one called YouTube metadata collection. And James is going to get a little more into that.
Yeah, so thank you, everyone. So yeah, our initial data set is going to be from this YouTube metadata collection, which is around 1.46 billion rows of data. However, of course, we're going to use a subsample of that. How it's split up is in around 5,000 tar files. So what we've done is we've written some code, and you can see this all in our GitHub. We have a different Python files. We have data entry, database connections, and download files. And what these do is they kind of automate the process of downloading these individual tar files, unzipping them, then loading the JSON files into a database. And we're using a Postgres database for that. So the final result is around 300 million rows. We're taking a subsample every fifth file, basically. So these 300 million rows eventually now have been already finished. So we've processed those into our database, and you can see some of them here. So of course, some of the metadata is very obvious, like video ID, the fetch date, the upload date, the title of the video. And of course, there's other stuff too. Of particular interest to us are things like view count, like count, and dislike count. And we want to eventually use these to, again, predict those dislike counts. In the final result, we're not going to have access to those dislike counts. So we do have to be a bit wary of which data is actually available at the time of inference. But we're going to try to figure out if we can find first any trends, and then if we could use those to predict the number of dislikes, or at least the ratio, and see if it's in a problematic ratio. So our initial data set, of course, is of these 300 million, and we've already done that part. Our next step would be to do two things. So the first step is to figure out how to effectively process this data. So with 300 million rows of data, we have a lot of course, stuff to handle. So we have some data sets here where we're beginning to work with things like Spark. There's other things like CUDF, which uses GPU. So we're using lots of different things that we're testing out. Of course, so we welcome any help for anyone who's experienced with processing very large data sets, because obviously the processing time would be extremely challenging to deal with. So this is some of our code. Of course, so it's commented out because we were testing it. The other issue that we're going to face is, of course, then using those calculations into the analysis, because we're in the first step is the data processing step, which is we've already loaded it, but then we have to actually figure out how to operate on that data. And then once we can figure that part out, we're going to transfer into the kind of analysis stage where we'll begin doing lots of different analysis, such as, histograms of dislike, ratios, for example, or other sort of trends. Of course, then what else we're going to be doing is we're going to be using NLP on the comments, because we think that comments of videos could be really useful for determining if a video is, let's say, problematic or not, and it would have an indication of a high dislike count. And that's actually what Sashaank is working on. So Sashaank is working on a script that we're modifying from an online GitHub repo to scrape data from the HTML directly, the video ID, and it gets you the top 10 relevant comments. These are things that we can configure, and we're going to put those into a separate table. And that's what we're going to be working on next. So we would have one video table and one comment table, and then we're going to have to join those on video ID to do further processing steps. But thank you. And so that's what we're working on now. And if anyone has any tips on how to process big data or using Spark, and of course, increasing the YouTube API limit, which we might need to do, we'd welcome it. So thank you.